Yeah, so my name is Justin Rabindra, and the most time that I've spent uh, career-wise has been in advertising for almost about 33, 34 years, and uh, and I have I quit in 2012 to become a full-time photographer because it was something that fascinated me for the longest time, and it was my passion on the side. And so I've been shooting food and interiors and travel and portraits and what have you, and having a blast. So a little before this whole COVID incident started, I thought I needed to do something interesting again. And one of the things that I was doing towards the last few years in advertising was a lot of training. And so I said, like, I'm missing my training. So let me see what's happening in the training front. And I found that storytelling has been getting traction, and it really fascinated me. And the more I studied it, the more I researched it, I found that this is something that I really want to do. So now I'm doing training, and here we are. We're talking about storytelling, and I connected with Shruti on LinkedIn. We haven't even met yet, but we discovered we have this common love for storytelling. And I said, why don't we do these webinars together? And we're having a blast doing it. We hope you enjoy your time with us today. Shruti, over to you.
Absolutely. We are actually having a very good time conducting this series of webinar. And to just quickly introduce myself, I am Shruti Sapra. I am a storyteller and a trainer. So basically, I come from a finance background. That's where I spent over 10 years in the corporate sector. But training and workshop were always like my side hustle. And when I took a break for motherhood, I had two wonderful children. And when I wanted to come back, training was like the obvious thing that I wanted to come back on. And like stories interested me. And there were a lot of instances that happened that gave me the nudge that, yeah, wow, what a power of stories. That's probably a story for another time. I'll keep it brief right now. So that's how we got together, and that's how I am into this storytelling for corporates and businesses, and we are having a wonderful time. We hope you too have a wonderful time with us in this webinar as we go ahead. Thank you. Okay, so we formally begin. Yeah.
Shruti and I have been ambitious, and we've attempted to give you value in these 2 hours, and we've packed in a lot. So we will jump right into it, and we hope you can keep up with it, and we hope you'll participate to make it, really valuable for everybody. So when I was in college in Chennai, I was doing my maths, and one of the things that one of the things that struck me towards the end of my graduation was one of the career that I wanted to get into was advertising. And within advertising, I told myself the agency to join would be Ogilvy and Mehta. Now, for those of you who don't know Ogilvy and Mehta, and I'm surprised that there are people in the world who don't know Ogilvy and Mehta, O&M is one of the most creative agencies in the world, and in India, it has always been one of the top two agencies for the longest time, for like decades. And the thing is that the thing that appealed to me about Gilby back then was not the fact that they did the most creative act, which they did, and not the fact that they were probably the largest agency or number two at that point. It was the stories that I heard about the founder, about David Ogilvy. And I'm talking about a time when there was no internet. So the only news or only kind of information you got about people and companies and founders was from what you read in publications, or from what you heard from people who had worked there. Okay, so and stories kind of trickled down to you, and I said, this is such a fascinating guy. He quits Oxford University after getting a scholarship into college. He goes and works as a chef in Paris in a restaurant, and then he quits that and he comes back to England and he sells cooking ranges door to door, and then he goes to America and he joins a farm and becomes a farmer for some time. So I can make out he's such a restless character. And then he comes to New York and he starts this agency. And the thing about David Ogilvy is he's a copywriter. He's like full of words. He's a creative guy and he's a communicator and a storyteller. Intuitively, the man is a storyteller. He is constantly sending out memos to the people, and he was very clear about the way that we shall behave. He was very clear about the culture of the organization and things like that. And so, in the early days, when a head of office, when a branch manager joined an O&M the company, and he walked to his desk, he would find one Matryoshka doll. Now, this was a doll which you had several dolls within each other that finally sat as one doll. So you would open it and you take out another doll. You'd open the second one and open the third, and finally you reached the last and smallest doll. And when you opened that, you would find a small rolled up piece of paper like a Chinese fortune cookie, and you'd unroll it, and there's a message from David Ogilvy himself, which says, if each of you hires people who are smaller than us, we'll become a company of dwarfs. If each of us hires people who are bigger than us, we will become a company of giants. So right from the start, he is setting the vision for the branch manager. He's describing the kind of people we want to hear. In fact, a little later, he actually tells them, if you need to pay a person you hire a salary that is more than yours, go ahead and do it. I mean, have you heard of anything like that? The interesting thing is that this practice of these Matryoshka dolls given to branch heads stopped after a few years, probably because branches were opening up all over the place and branches were joining and just couldn't keep up with getting the dolls out there on time. But what's interesting is that despite the fact that the practice ended, the stories never did. The stories continued. Everyone has heard about the story till today. And and the company is infused with the kind of things that David Ogilvy used to say. Some of the things are really interesting. And I mean, I managed to lay my hands on this thing which says the corporate culture of Ogilvy and Mehta, as set down by David Ogilvy, what we believe and how we behave. I'll just read out a couple of things. He says, we are opposed to management by intimidation. We abhor ruthlessness. We like people with gentle manners. We seek we see no conflict between adherence to high professional standards in our work and human kindness in dealings with each other. And then he talks about work. He says, never run an advertisement you would not want your family to see. Unless your campaign contains a big idea, it will pass like a ship in the night. Now, the thing is that I joined Ogilvy fairly late into my career, but I end up spending 1/3 of my career there. For the simple reason that the kind of stories that I heard, the kind of agency it was, the kind of culture that it had appealed to me emotionally. And you realize that that is what an employee is in an organization for and would work in an organization for and would stay there for several years. So his vision percolates through, and decades after David Ogilvy has passed away, his vision remains, and his spirit like still exists and continues to exist in the organization. Change the slide, please. So the thing is that we need I think you need to hold the previous slide, Shruti. So we really need a tool in the company that cuts through the clutter of all the information that we are bombarded with. In fact, there are three things that a story does. Three powerful things. You will find that it captivates, it influences, and if you're really lucky, a story is capable of transforming. It's funny, but you can always recognize the start of a story. A manager walks into a weekly meeting and he says, "You know what happened today? The police stopped me at the traffic light." You stop and you have to listen. Or someone starts a presentation with, my daughter's teacher called me up this morning just before I got into the car. Or a sales and marketing director starts a town hall speech with, "I have a confession to make." Now, these are grabbers. They stop you on your tracks and they grab your attention. Now, if the story is good, you'll hang on to every word that is spoken, which is exactly what happens when you're sitting in front of a movie or you started reading a good book. Now, stories, secondly, are very influencing in just the way that a story is. Some of the some of the best stories in history have influenced the masses. A lot of them for good purposes, and a lot of them for tragic, terrible purposes. Churchill addressed his nation during the Second World War and and mobilizes the entire nation to fight back a nation which was militarily stronger than them, just through the power of his speech on the radio. He just fights back. Then, of course, you have the cases of Martin Luther King and Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi, who fought off oppressive forces of racism, hatred, oppression, and whatnot, and inspired millions to bring about change at the national and global level. And the interesting thing is, despite the fact that these people are dead and gone, they continue to inspire people generation after generation. You realize the power of how influential a good story is. These were storytellers who painted a vision of the future that influenced people to act. Transformation. Sometimes stories can be magical in the effect and the way that they transform people. You take religion, for instance. I mean, that's a classic case. At, at, at the end of the day, they are based on age old stories and myths, and people's behaviors are influenced. And often they're transformed into people that some of them, like their mothers, wouldn't recognize them. The greatest tragedies, on one hand, have been unleashed on the world in the name of religion. You take the Crusades. There are several other movements that have just, in the name of religion, have like massacred people purely on the basis of stories that were told and believed by them. I mean, they were transformed into monsters in some cases. Then, of course, you have stories that do good. In the case of, at a very human level, the Alcoholics Anonymous support and help transform addicts by virtue of the stories that they tell at their weekly AA meetings. You realize sometimes that stories are even more powerful than medication. You realize that when you tell a story, you are effectively planting ideas and emotions into the brain of the listener. It's an effect called neural coupling, where the listener actually experiences the same feelings that the narrator is communicating. Seth Godin says, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, it is about the stories you tell. Come, let's learn how to tell some stories.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Okay, now very quickly we will move to a particular activity. But before we do, I'll brief you as to what we're looking at. This goes back when I was a fresher and I joined American Express. So back then, as a fresher, when you enter such a big organization, you're generally given some very basic tasks to do. And those tasks would generally finish, say, about half a day, and then the rest of the half day, it's all yours. You read, you study, you do whatever you want, it's all yours. So since this was going on for a week, one fine day, I happened to approach a colleague of mine who was really busy with his work, a lot of work on his hands. So I kind of tapped on his shoulder and said, why don't you just offload some of your stuff to me and see if I can work on it? And he obliged me. He randomly passed on to me a few accounts. So the nature of work was such that we were handling some discrepancies in the credit card statement. Now, these were the discrepancies related to either excess billing or wrong billing, or maybe certain other discrepancies, could be anything. Now, he gave me a few accounts. They weren't very straightforward, but I took my time and finally managed to clear them. He was nice enough to upload the accounts into the system, the resolution that I did into the account under my name. He kind of gave me the due credit for it. Now, after about a week, I'm sitting coolly on my chair and reading some documents. My intercom rings and I pick up and say, hi, Shruti. So this lady on the other side says, this is Cindy. Can I speak to Shruti, please? I said, yeah, this is Shruti. And no bells ring in my mind. I'm new to the organization. I don't know much. So this colleague who's sitting right next to me, he says, Cindy? Cindy what's more? He's whispering to me. I said, yeah. He kind of, gestures. He's telling me, she's the CFO. She's the CFO. And I froze. I practically froze. She spoke to me. She thanked me. And she told me that the case that I had solved was a high-profile case. It belonged to a friend of hers. And he had written a nice email to the company saying that thanks for resolving, and how he is thankful for the entire thing. And she spoke to me for 2 minutes. And at the end of 2 minutes, she kind of tells me that, so Shruti, apart from solving these cases, what else do you like to do? What else are you doing in your time in American Express? Trust me, guys, I had nothing to say. I completely froze. I, who was like an extrovert in my school and a college, very soon realized that this corporate world and interacting to people like CEOs and CFOs was a completely different ballgame, and I was not prepared for it. If you see here is, I had ticked a lot of boxes, like I had done some hard work, I had taken initiative, and I had proved that I am capable of something really nice, but where I fell short was that I could not speak for myself. If I would have probably spoken about myself and probably told my side of the story, I would have got some nice brownie points. Very often we come to a scenario where we think that we do some good job and we let our work speak for ourselves. But in the current scenario, I think it is equally important, or maybe even more important, to be able to tell your story and tell the kind of hard work that you have done. It is probably called blowing your own trumpet, but when you've done the work, why not do it? I especially want to raise this to the women folk, because I think that sometimes we don't really do this very often. It comes a little more naturally to the men. They end up talking about their work more easily than what we do. I think we really need to start now and start using words and phrases in meetings, in public forums, where we can express the kind of work that we are doing. This was a very small example of something that happened in my organization. I was impacted by it. I learned from it. What did I really learn from it? I learned from the fact that I really need to speak about what I did, and I need to develop my communication skills. Now, this is an example of something that happened, and I learned from it. I'm sure that all of you would also have some such examples in the organization, and that could be converted into stories, which is what our activity now is. We move you to breakout rooms now in groups of 5, where we want you to tell us stories about any of these topics. I'll quickly run you past the topics that we're looking at. These are examples. You could use others as well. An incident at workplace, an employee in your organization that exceeded expectations and you were really impressed and you can tell that story, a leader who inspired and motivated your team, a significant customer feedback story. You received some really good feedback, or not so good feedback maybe, but it is a story that you can tell and everybody can learn something from it. a client meeting that did not go well, and what did you learn from it maybe, and an HR experience, the hiring and the how the organization works and things like that. So I now move you to the breakout rooms. Do you want to add anything, Justin, here?
No, that's fine. Yeah, we want the groups to discuss some of these points and come back. When you come back, we'd like you to share one or two or three stories that kind of stood out and share it with the larger group.
Okay, in terms of timelines, we're looking at 10 minutes in the breakout rooms, hopefully 2 minutes per person, and then we come back and discuss. Yeah. Okay, here you all go. Hi there, do you want to join one of the groups, please? Hi, is this just the two of you here?
Yeah.
You want me to move you to the another room so that you have a better interaction?
I think so. That would be better.
I will do that. Give me just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Hi, Shruti.
Oh, no. Have you guys started?
No, we haven't yet started.
Hi, Ravi, are you there?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Just wanted to have a look at the different subjects once again.
Basically, it's about any instance or any
instance.
activity in the office, in a workplace scenario. Could be business, could be workplace, office, which moved you, which impacted you, and you want to tell about that. Or it could be an instance that happened with you, or maybe that you observed something.
Okay, thanks.
So, Amol, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course, I would like to start.
Yeah. Do we have Hina? Hina, are you there?
Hey, Shruti.
Hi. We would
Yeah,
really want everybody to participate.
Sure. I was in
Yeah.
fact busy writing.
Okay, cool. So we'll have Amol to start.
Yeah. So it was in 2007. As usual, I had come to my office. It was around 9 o'clock in the morning. And as usual, as you unwind and you unpack your bag, set up your laptop, you are into a mood to start the day. You have things in your mind, some things on your diary as to what is going to be your agenda for the day. And I received this call. There's nothing unusual about the call because this call is from my head in Mumbai, Udyan. Udyan generally calls every morning just to check what is your schedule today, whom are you meeting, and stuff like that. I pick up the call. I was heading the branch at that point in time. And the moment I pick up the call, Udyan is differently talking this time. He's unusual. He's not his regular self. He's in a kind of a panic and kind of a hurry. He said, Amol, what are you doing? I said, I've just come down to office, unpacking my bag and stuff. He said, doesn't matter. Just pack it up, take a bus, come down to Mumbai immediately. I said,
Okay.
what are you talking about? He said, doesn't matter. What are you wearing? Whatever it is, just pack it up, take a bus from Shivaji Nagar, come down to Mumbai. I want you here by lunch time. Now, when you get this kind of call from your boss, generally Uday and I shared a good friendship. So I thought he's joking in the morning. I said, Udyan, let's be serious. What is it about? He said, okay, let me tell you. Raman has called up. Raman was our MD. He's called you and you need to be here at 1 o'clock. Now, when your CEO or an MD calls you and your boss is sounding little panicky on the phone, it's actually a thing to worry about.
Actually.
And as it is, I rushed to Shivaji Nagar, pick up a bus. My office was in Bandra, NIC complex. Somehow I reached there. I'm sweating since it's a Mumbai heat, and I reached there. I reached there at 12:30. And now I'm waiting what is going to happen. I'm waiting at the reception. The receptionist tells Udyan Amol has arrived. He comes to the reception, escorts me inside, and he doesn't speak a single word. I said, Udyan, what is happening? Tell me.
That's a lot of suspense building up.
He says,
Yeah.
just wait. Just wait. I went back and was thinking, have I done something wrong? Is there a complaint from a customer? Because even if it's a complaint from a customer, Udyan would scold me, but MD has called up, that means something is really serious. And Udyan escorts me to this cafeteria where there's a lot of people around. And I'm saying, my God, is it going to be a pants down in front of everyone? And the moment I reach there, stand beside Udyan, wondering what is happening. After a few minutes, my name is called. Now your name is called in front of people. You don't know what is going to happen. Somehow I look at Udyan, Udyan looks at me. He nudges me to go. I walk up and there are two guys standing there, Rex and Ek. Both of them, handling Asia Pacific business for us, had flown down to Mumbai. And then Raman standing there declares, he is the star of this quarter, the principal star of this quarter. And then I am awarded with a small star and a certificate in front of everyone by Rex, and I am being snapped.
Wow.
Udyan stands there smiling. And at that point, I felt like hitting Udyan because I wasn't wearing the best of my formals. So I go back, and Udyan takes me out of the crowd and then hugs me and says, keep it up. That was from my end. Thank you.
Perfect.
Very
That's a
nice.
great
Very
example.
nice.
Yeah. Okay, we'll quickly move on to either Ravi or Hina. Anybody?
If Ravi wants to go ahead, he can. Otherwise, I would like to give a very small little incident about something.
Okay.
So I'm basically a soft skills trainer, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I run my own interior design company here in Dubai.
Okay.
So I've been doing a lot of trainings for the past 20 years with a company called Langerock here. And the MD of the company, the managing director, is a guy called Mark. If you look at Mark, he looks like, a live version of Hugh Grant.
Okay.
And a very interesting man. And the one thing I want to talk about is that for every training that I would take, he would personally come and address everyone.
Okay.
And he would make sure that, I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background. So for every training that I would take, he would ensure that he would address the management and any questions that they had, because it can happen that a trainer talks about a lot of things which are not really practical. And this guy would make sure that these trainings that we conducted are very, very practical and easy to use things. So that's one thing I did want to share about.
Okay. Ravi, do you want to go? And hi, Danish, do you want to share something?
Yeah.
Want to go after Ravi?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, okay.
Thanks, Shruti. If I have actually a small story. I mean, there are several stories, but one I can very well remember right now is what Amol was sharing his experience in Bombay, getting the Star Award and all that. A similar thing happened. I was working in international marketing. A company called Jindal is one of the companies where I was working in Delhi. And I was doing territories of West Africa and Central America. Have you people heard of the country by name Honduras?
No, sorry. I haven't.
Amol nods his head.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a country in Central America. Central America is, the North America and South America. In between, there's something like a chord, In that, there are 5 or 6 countries are there.
Yes.
One of them is Honduras. So that's the first order I got, about some $26 million for some engineering projects for Jindal. It's a huge order. So my CEO said same like what Amol had his experience. He said, Mr. Jindal wants to see you.
Okay.
I was literally shivering, because the big man wants to see me. Then, and it's a big order. So I thought maybe they're talking about the order, how we got it, what is the profitability, because all the owners, they talk about only one thing. Is there any profit or not, or the company will go into loss? So I was a little scared, because I wanted to do a quick check about the costings and everything. But then we didn't have much time. We just went. First thing, Mr. Jindal was very happy, and he said, you tell me where is this Honduras country is. And fortunately, in his cabin, he has a huge world map. He said, please point it out and show it to me. Then when I showed it to him, he asked me the story, how did you travel there? What are the visas? How did you travel? And all that kind of story. Then I have to tell him the entire story within the story. Tell him how I reached US, from US to Panama, Panama to Honduras, and the visas and all that, how we could manage. And finally, of course, he asked me, how did we win this huge order of 26 million in spite of having this competition and all that. So that is another separate story, which I had briefed him. But these kind of things which, like Shruti, you also expressed, you didn't hear the word Honduras before. But this is what happens, first of all, you have to know there's a country there is a requirement there, there's a project, we have to make a bidding, tender, everything, the whole 9 yards keeps going. And at the end is you have to be successful, then you have a story to tell. If you
Absolutely.
lose it,
Which is the magic of stories that
yes.
having never heard of the country,
Yeah.
I speak to you and obviously I get that impression.
Probably after this meeting is over, probably you look at the world map and see where it
and
is.
share it with my children as well, because sometimes
Exactly. Yeah.
we use a huge map and I tell them a random country and they go looking for it. So maybe next time that's a good clue for me.
Right.
There's
So,
another way of identifying countries. I would recommend to watch the Asian Games and the Olympics, so that you'll know, you get to know through athletes which country they belong to. At least you know that these countries exist. That's how I know, Ravi. There's no other way, but this is how
I'm
I
sorry,
know.
I'll head back to the room. I'll go organize things there and I'll.
Shruti, can I recommend some introductions before you go ahead or something like that? We haven't introduced ourselves, or
we will have an interaction session when we go back in the main room. I'll head back. You guys can continue. I will take the organization there. Hi, you guys are back from which room?
Room 3.
Okay. So
Room
did you
3
finish your
is room
activity?
3 is left. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a good time to call everybody back. So what was the experience?
It was nice. It was quite illuminating because such small instances sometimes get remembered. That it's interesting.
True. We will wait for everybody to get back.
Is everybody back yet?
In about another 2-3 seconds. A few people are left.
Okay, fine.
You will take over from here, Justin?
Yes. Yeah.
Room 2 is, we're waiting for room 2 to come back.
Okay. Did you have a good session in your groups?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was actually looking at my schedule.
Huh.
I am really thinking we are running short of time. We're enjoying the
short?
stories.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll probably
Yeah.
catch up.
Yeah, we'll do as much as we can.
Yes.
We also had some exciting stories.
I
All
think
were
everybody's
good
back.
stories. Okay,
Everybody's
wonderful.
back, yes.
Okay. So welcome back, folks. I have like 3 or 4 questions. Now, would anyone like to share how it felt when you were hearing the stories? And number 2, was there any connection that you felt with the narrator? Anybody, just unmute yourself and jump in, please. How did it feel?
Hi everyone, that's Monika this side. And can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I was in the breakout room too. And
Yes.
I felt it was like just a 10-minute span, but 6 of us felt quite connected because for few of us, the story was quite correlating. And that's how it happened. And we never realized the time was over. And we were being pushed back to the main room.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Hi.
That's the magic of stories.
Yes,
Hi,
indeed
this
it
is
is.
Ajay, and I was in breakout room 3. The stories were like they evoke a sense of relatability. You realize that yes, these are the situations which are real life situations, and we all have faced them at some point in time or the other. And that was something which was interesting. Particularly, there was a toilet paper story in our room which was being told, and how the cleanliness in toilets mattered in India. And the feedback that came was also quite heartening to that clean toilets. So these kind of things is something which makes you really relate to the situations that we are in.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
In our room, we saw that for every situation, there are many stories, you know. So we see a situation from one point of view, the other person, because of the change in perspective, story changes, you know, in his mind. So we had some very nice, diverse stories and very nice stories, right?
Let me ask you this question. Was anybody influenced in any way? Influenced to the extent of transformation? Has any fundamental, I know it happened, now we're talking just 10 minutes of storytelling. And I'm asking like something, did anything powerful change in your mind? Has any influence happened? Have you transformed? Have you changed a belief in your head as a result of hearing one of those stories that you have heard?
I'd maybe like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
Can someone mute?
Yeah, I'm
thanks.
doing
Sorry. Yeah. So yes, so I heard this story in our room about like going beyond the call of duty to help a customer. So I think this is something. I mean, it's not just about a customer. It could be your colleague. It could be your somebody in your acquaintance or wherever it is. But sometimes when you see that a person needs help, you should always, like, you know, without a thought, go ahead and not look at the what will come back to you. I mean, you should just go ahead and do it because you see it happening in front of you, and that was something really nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to tell you. I think I mentioned this in
Renu,
my,
are you? Your voice is breaking. We can't really hear you very well.
I think I should just leave this now.
Is Renu speaking to us?
I
Yes.
don't think she's interacting with us. Sounds like
No?
she's talking to somebody else.
Okay, then I mute her in that case. Anybody else? Or she's muted herself anyways.
Would anybody like to share how they've been influenced by a story?
I think if I may,
Yes, please.
more than influence, I think we sort of, so there was this conversation that we had about customer service and how one person can, how we realize that when we are sitting as a customer service representative, and then when we are standing on the other side of the table, our experiences sort of shape our ability to think from the other person's perspective. So me and I think Richie, we both had similar experiences where you have faced a customer who is expecting more than you are in an ability to provide. And then she brought up the point that what happens is when you're standing on the other side of the table, we do expect more from them. So that was something which we found relatable. I'm not sure if it is more of influencing, but it was definitely relatable.
Fantastic. Yeah, I found all the stories amazing. I mean,
can I try again, please?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I did some adjustment to my mic, I guess. So
No, it's now you are actually audible now. Please go ahead.
yeah, but well, last time I was talking to you guys. I was not talking to anybody else.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to share. I did mention this in my group as well. I have so obviously I'm an HR MBA graduate, and I gradually moved into training. But that realization came to me, Shruti, when you were giving your story. So when you were talking about that, the realization came to you that how you do not talk to ladies don't talk about our stories, or we are not really tuned to talk about ourselves. The realization came to me at that point when your story was happening, that that actually even I don't talk to my own self as much. Forget the world outside. I don't even talk to my own self. And the tipping point of exactly the shift from my regular human resources to a training and a counseling sector. So that tipping point I realized when your story was happening. So I would say, Shruti, you influenced me to kind of introspect. So thank you.
I am so glad. I'm so glad.
That is exactly the kind of feedback we want to get.
Okay,
we have one happy customer today. At least one.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, the fact is that the fact is that once you've heard a story like that, your mind changes. There is a chemical change that happens in the very makeup of the wiring actually gets, rewiring happens. So moving on, the fact is that from the earliest times we've been telling stories, and from when we were sitting around the fireside, cavemen and women, and our brains have evolved, and it's been a survival tool for us. Our human development, our human evolution has been so dependent on the stories that we've been telling. And so recent research, fairly recent research, demonstrates to us that when a story is being told and a listener is listening to the story, the portions of the brain light up according to the event that is happening in the story, which means if I'm saying that in a part of the story there's a bright light that just blinded me, the visual cortex of the brain lights up. And if you're talking about the smoothness of her hair, or how rough the leather purse felt, the sensory cortex of the brain lights up. And so you realize that the different parts of the brain light up. So the same parts of the brain light up as is being activated in the storyteller himself. So effectively, the listener is living out the story that is being narrated. So if you're watching a movie and the hero, there's something happening to the hero, you are actually in his place and you are feeling what that hero is feeling, whether it's sadness or fury or anger or fear. or whatever other emotion that the hero is feeling. So that's the power of stories. So it's not, so they say that experience is the best teacher. Storytelling is the next best to teach something. There's a guy called Dr. Paul Zak who's done beautiful research on the effect of this neurochemical called oxytocin and the effect that it has as a result of storytelling. And he's demonstrated that the effect of the oxytocin has a direct impact on the amount of money that you would spend when a charity appeal is made to you. So the story that an appeal comes to you in directly influences the amount of money that you are willing to shell out, the check that you're willing to make out. And I'm sure you have experienced it yourself, where some stories get you to say that I'm going to help this child who requires hospitalization. All this crowdfunding ads that happen and appeals that happen and that come through WhatsApp and Facebook and things like that, and you say that I'm going to shell out money, and you realize that a lot of people have paid, sent money, and the person invariably gets more money than is required from that operation. Why is it that that's happening? It's because people can't resist the power of stories to help somebody who's a complete stranger, far away, another part of the country altogether. That's the power of story, which we can apply in businesses today. And so we bond through stories, and we are emotionally moved and connect through stories. So the thing is that businesses need to understand that employees are more than just their employee numbers. They are human beings who connect and respond to stories. And customers are not just data points; they are also human beings and relate to stories. The moment we start relating to people as human beings and who are affected by emotions, we can get our stories right. Shruti.
Yeah. Okay. We move on to our next segment where we talk about our story arc. Those of you who attended our previous session must have seen that we had a story arc, which is true for most of the stories. But the business story arc is a little different. So just very brief about the traditional story arc is about any story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The action rises to a point where we reach a climax, and then it falls, reaches an end where there is some learning. Contrary to that, the business story arc is slightly different. What I'm saying here is that at the point of beginning, there is status quo, where things are normal, everything is going smooth. Then something happens. There is some action, there is some drama that happens. And then things start to get into trouble. There's a failure movement, or there's a big issue. There could be anything which needs a lot of attention. And then the action rises again. You introspect, you do your research, or somebody gives you some help. Something else happens, there's a solution. And in the end, there is a lot of learning from something that happened. And then there's a new status quo. To understand the story graph a little better, we have another slide. And along with that slide, I will narrate my story that will help you correlate between the story arc and how a business story is run. Now, what happens is that in one of my previous organizations, where I was responsible for a huge team that used to take care of clients, and our major task was to make financial statements, monthly financial statements for them. Now, we were a good team and a happy team with some really happy clients. But one fine week, what happened was we started to receive some concerns and negative feedback from one of the clients. And this was a client that was taken care of by my best team member, the best performer in the team, which had no history of any discrepancies, no negative feedback, no issues, nothing. And Absolutely, without realizing anything, in no time, the entire issue snowballed into something so big that without us realizing anything what was happening, we directly received an email into the inbox of the director of the organization from the client saying that I'm sorry, I'm not happy with your services. I am not happy the way things are being dealt. I'm going to take away the account from you. That was actually a disaster. We quickly went into firefighting mode. We actually went and saw what was happening in the accounts. We looked at the customer emails. We did a lot of firefighting, and thanks to all the help that I received from my team and my seniors, we managed to save the account. We instantly, the first step that we took was that we moved the account from a junior person to the senior person. And what we realized in the analysis was that the client's business had gone through a lot of changes in the last couple of months, which was now being reflected in the financial statement. And our staff, our key employee was not trained to take care of those the new challenges and the complexities that had now arisen in the account. So as a first step, we changed the staff on the account and we moved it to a senior staff who was equipped to take care of this. And if I plot this, if you're able to follow me on the graph, we reached a point where we managed to firefight and save the client from running away from our bucket. What are the learnings that happened? If you see, we realized that we needed to identify the problem much ahead than what we really did. We should have caught it even much before that it kind of exploded. The second thing was that we trained the existing employees to take care of the complexities that could arise in the account. And the third most important thing for me was that I needed to tell my employees to raise the red flag in advance. Because if that girl would have raised the red flag in advance, I'm sure the situation would not have got out of hand like this. So this is basically a template of a story arc. This is the journey of your story. You can use this template to wherever you think you want to tell a business story, and make sure that you have all of these components. Without these components, your story will be a flat line. There needs to be anxiety. There needs to be some conflict happening. There needs to be a journey of how you really solved the problem. And in the end, most importantly, what did you really learn from that problem? Justin, would you like to add anything here?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that the interesting thing about this arc is that it's thousands of years old. The structure of a story was defined by Aristotle himself thousands of years back. He said that a story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and invariably it takes that shape. You know, so if you're narrating a story which essentially has this shape, you are telling a good story. It is following a structure which is time tested by thousands of years. So invariably you have a starting point, life is normal, you hit a speed bump which is close to a failure, you get over it and you succeed, and you reach another point which is higher than the point which you started at. That's a classic storytelling arc. Now, coming to the next point, coming to business itself. The thing is that where businesses are concerned, invariably they end up focusing on their product, on their idea, and on their business. Now, where people are concerned, where people and their relationship to businesses are concerned, what they have on their minds is the question of, why should I interact with this business? And the more important question is, why should I care about what you are to me? There is, I mean, in today's time, when there is like finite time in my hands, I'm like bombarded with messages and I'm so busy. Why do I care what you have for me? Like I said, and businesses think that, you know, everybody's interested in their ideas and their product and their business. No, it doesn't happen that way. Businesses need to focus on the people. because the people are looking for stories that emerge from the companies in whatever form. Like when I was in college, and the stories that emerged to me from Ogilvy, from the big man, it's the stories that percolate down to people's brains, and that's what inspires people to either become a customer or join the or want to join the company as an employee or want to invest in that company. It's the stories that move us. It's not how wonderful the quality of your product is. Now, this is therefore the challenge for the company, to use stories to answer that most important question: why should I care? Now, let's look at some areas that companies can tell their stories through.
Yeah. Okay. We now come to a point where we're going to talk about where can you tell stories at workplace. This is a brief list on various areas where we think you can tell your stories. We'll take each one of them one by one. The first one being leadership and motivation. We have seen that leaders all over the world, whether they are corporate leaders or whether they are leaders in politics or elsewhere, they use a lot of stories to influence people and gather followers. I'm going to now play a video for you all. This is a video about where Barack Obama, the ex-president of United States of America, is giving a speech as part of his campaign, the second phase of his campaign, and he's telling a story of how he went through the campaign in the first phase. So he's kind of narrating an instance that happened with him. Can you hear us?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, one minute.
No.
1 minute, I'll just fix that.
I'd met her at some function where I was still competing in South Carolina. It was one of the early primary states, and I really wanted the endorsement of a state representative down there. I'd met her at some function where nobody knew me, nobody could pronounce my name. They're wondering, what's he thinking?
Sorry, I'll interrupt right here. I would request you all to do a couple of things for us. This is a video that's going to play. He's telling a story. If with the help of this video, you could note down what you think are the key elements of storytelling and which were the areas wherein Mr. President used that. And we all know that he's a wonderful storyteller, and this video is an exemplary example of storytelling. So let's see if you can all note some of these here, and then we talk about it after the video.
So I asked her for endorsement, and she said, I tell you what, Obama, I will give you my endorsement if you come to my hometown of Greenwood, South Carolina. And I think I had a little bit of wine during dinner, because right away I said, okay. So it's about a month later, and I'm traveling back to South Carolina, and we flew in late at night. I think we were coming from Iowa. We'd been campaigning nonstop, traveling all through towns and having town hall meetings and shaking hands. And in between, I'm making phone calls, asking people for support. And so we land in Greenville, South Carolina at around midnight. We get to the hotel about 1 o'clock in the morning. I am wiped out. I'm exhausted. And I'm dragging my bags to my room. Back then, we didn't fly on Air Force One. And, the accommodations were a little different. And just as I'm about to walk into the room, one of my staff taps me on the shoulder and they say, excuse me, Senator. I was a senator back then. We're going to have to wake up and be on the road at 6:30 in the morning. And I said, what? Why? Well, you made this promise to go to Greenwood, and it's several hours away. And I try to keep my promises. So a few hours later, I wake up and I'm feeling terrible. I think a cold's coming on. And I open up the curtains to try to get some light to wake me up, but it's pouring down rain, terrible storm. And I take a shower, and get some coffee, and I open up the newspaper, and there's a bad story about me in the New York Times. I was much more sensitive at that time to bad stories. I've become more accustomed to these now. And finally I get dressed, I go downstairs, and I'm walking out to the car, and my umbrella blows open, and I'm soaked. So by the time I'm in the car, I'm wet, and I'm mad, and I'm still kind of sleepy. And it turns out that Greenwood is several hours away from every place else. So we drive, and we drive, and we drive, and we drive, and finally we get to Greenwood, although you don't know you're in Greenwood right away because there are not a lot of tall buildings around. And we pull up to a small field house, and I walk in, and I'm looking around. I don't hear a lot going on, and the state representative said she was going to organize a little meeting for us, and we walk in, and there are about 20 people there. And they're all kind of wet too, and they don't look very excited to see me. But you know, I'm running for president, so I do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm shaking hands. I say, "How do you do? Nice to meet you." And I'm making my way around the room, and suddenly I hear this voice cry out behind me, "Fired up!" And I'm startled, and I don't know what's going on. But everybody in the room, this is a small room, they act like this is normal. And when the voice says "fired up," they all say "ready to go." And so once again, I hear the voice, "Fired up." They say "fired up." They say "ready to go, ready to go." And so I look around, I turn behind me, there's this small woman, she's about 60 years old. Looks like she just came from church, she got a big church hat. And she's looking at me, kind of peering at me, and she's grinning, smiling, looking happy. Turns out she's a city councilwoman from Greenwood who also moonlights as a private detective. I'm not making this up. This is true. And it turns out she's famous throughout the area. When she goes to football games and when she goes to rallies and she goes to community events, she does this chant of hers. She does it wherever she goes. So for the next few minutes, she just keeps on saying, "Fired up." And everybody says "fired up," and she says "ready to go," and everybody says "ready to go." And I'm thinking, you know, this woman is showing me up. This is my meeting. I'm running for president, and she's dominating the room. And I look at my staff, and they just shrug their shoulders. They don't know what to do. So this goes on for a few minutes. Now here's the thing, Iowa. After a few minutes, I'm feeling kind of fired up. I'm feeling like I'm ready to go. So I start joining in the chant. My staff starts joining in the chant. Suddenly I feel pretty good. And we go on to talk about the lives of the people in the room and their families and their struggles and their hopes for their kids and their grandkids. And we drive out, and it's still raining, but it doesn't seem so bad. And we go to our next stop, and for the rest of the day, even after we left Greenwood, even though we still weren't getting any big crowds anyplace, even though people still couldn't pronounce my name, I felt good. And I'd see my staff, and I'd say, "Are you fired up?" They'd say, "We're fired up." They'd say, "Are you ready to go?" And they'd say, "We're ready to go." And we brought that to Iowa. And during our rallies, this became a chant. And we'd have signs saying "fired up," "ready to go." And the woman, her name was Edith Childs, she became a celebrity. And she was written up in the Wall Street Journal. And folks did news stories on her. And this became one of the anthems of our campaign back in 2008. Now,
wow. So, did everybody like the video? You fired up?
ready to go.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely brilliant.
So I kind of open the floor for a discussion. You could probably take turns, hopefully, to tell me what were the key elements of storytelling that you captured here. Anybody wants to go first?
I think the first one, the most important one, which Justin has been saying, that he got totally influenced by the slogans. He was totally influenced by the slogan. He hesitated. He didn't know what it was going on, but later on he caught on. When it was, he transformed his entire speech, his campaign, and he went on to the president.
True. Okay.
Hi, Shruti.
Yeah, hi.
I think what I really liked about the speech is that the way he infused humor and got the crowd along to play along with him. I think he was enjoying himself, and so the crowd was enjoying it with him. So they were getting influenced while they were also getting entertained.
True. True.
I think the little touches, hi, this is Ajay, little touches that he brought in were very interesting. Things like, back in those times, I didn't travel on Air Force One or, you know, stuff like that. I think those little things, like he was
would you like to name
putting
it
his own
like,
baggage and stuff like that. I'm saying that's very human, and that makes it so relatable.
yes, I'll just emphasize on this, that this was the example where he showed his vulnerability. When you bring out your vulnerability in your story, you connect with your audience much better. They relate to you like a human connection, that you're like one of them. So it is extremely important to, so that's a very good catch, Ajay. Thank you so much. Vinod, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So I think he created a beautiful word picture. Like you could actually see these people, see the locations, just the way he described them. So I think that was very powerful. And his use of pauses, he paused, you know, took his time to move on to the next point or to make a point sometimes. And I think that was also very powerful. Like he didn't hurry through his story.
True. Would you like to tell us a few examples of how he painted the picture? Anything?
Yeah, like for example, he talked about this 60-year-old lady, like the way he described her, she was small and she was 60 and she dominated
church
the room.
hat.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think all that kind of created, I could actually see this one story, like, little room in the middle of nowhere in the US and like a small audience sitting there in the cold maybe. And so I think it made the kind of whole story come alive in my mind. The way
In
he
fact, another small detail, similar detail was that this place, Greenwood, was several hours from everywhere. That was like quite interesting. Very isolated, small little town somewhere.
Humor.
Even when he mentioned about the pouring rain and the storms and how his umbrella blew up and he was soaked, he was actually painting a picture.
Absolutely. That is one key element of your storytelling. That when you are telling a story, you should be giving out details that help the audience to paint that picture, to see what you're trying to make them visualize. Very good point. Okay, who's going next? Sorry, I'll just call out. Can I have Ravi speaking, please? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Shruti.
Yeah.
One point I think he conveyed a message indirectly is his ability to keep up the promise. He came, he checked into the hotel around 1 o'clock in the night. Early morning 6:30, he has to drive down. And he says, in spite of all the problems and the rain, heavy rain, in spite of all that, he just wanted to keep up the promise. He's sending a message to the voters that whatever he promises, he would keep up. So
Sharing
that
of
is an
values,
election.
I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi.
Welcome.
Even I just.
Can you tell your name, please, before you start?
Gargi. This is Gargi here, Shruti.
Yeah, Gargi, please go on.
Yeah. So actually, there was this feeling, that feeling of exhaustion that he said he was wet and he was sleepy when he was starting with it, and when at the ending he said even now it was wet, but it wasn't that bad. Even now people did remember my name, didn't pronounce my name right, but it wasn't that bad. It was humor, as well as it was very connecting to what he was speaking.
Perfect, Gargi. This I would
Can I
like to
make
term as sharing your emotions, expressing what you were feeling at that moment to the audience. So I'll quickly put a few. You have almost mentioned all of them. He was wiped out.
Can I add one more point?
Yes, please.
So I think it was very important that he knew the audience. If the chant that he was using was, was not known by the audience that he was speaking in, it could have sort of fallen flat. It would have taken some time for people to understand. But the minute he said fired up, the entire audience shouted ready to go. So that sort of showed that he knew who he was talking to, and these people would completely relate to what incident he has.
You mentioned it correct. That's an important point, to know your audience. Before you tell your story, you need to research your audience so that you are able to give a fairly relatable story. To elaborate on what Gargi had said, we were saying that you need to express emotions whenever you're changing a scene or you're narrating a journey. Almost at every journey, try and bring out the kind of emotions that you went through. So he talked about being wiped out, tired in the beginning. Then he was mad because it was raining so heavily and the journey was extremely long. Then he was startled. Did anybody really notice? I was waiting for this to come up. When he was startled, you saw his shoulders going. When the umbrella folded, his hand went like that. When he dressed up, his hands went like this. He's also enacting the story for you for better effects. So when we try to tell stories, or when we want you to tell stories, we don't want you to, sit with your hands tight and tell the story. We want you to use your hands, your body gestures to tell the story. The effect is immense. Okay.
Shruti, I want to add one point. I'm not sure. I think it was when he had to drive at 6:30 in the morning, so they had to start the whole car drive. I think that's when he used an exclamation and he said, "What?" So he literally enacted the what. So as a listener, because of that enactment or that emotion that I know how he felt. He conveyed to me how he felt. Now he prepared me to wait on to listen to what followed next.
Okay.
So that was a, good point as well.
So that is about the tone and the gestures, using variety of tone in your storytelling to take that. So I think most of it is taken. I would like to thank you all. Yes,
small
please.
thing, if I may
Quickly,
add.
please. Yes,
I think,
sure.
yes. So right from the beginning, it was about making that audience feel I am one of you. I go through a long day. I get tired. It's all the same what you feel, and I am here stepping into your shoes to tell the story. And he made the woman larger than life. That what she was. It could have been all about him and how what it triggered within him, but he made it as close to every single person who was listening to this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll quickly move on. Is there anybody who wants to add something?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I want to add.
May I?
Very quickly, please. Thank you so much. Yeah.
This is
Avinash
Lata.
can go
I
first.
just like
Yes,
the
yes.
fact.
So I could sense that he was very honest and in exhibiting that he's here to seek help.
Okay.
And during the entire course of action, his body language was supporting each and every word that he spoke. And he didn't mean it to hide also. Not only did he use his words well, but as you also just said, the body language was exceptional, that of a leader. It was not just of a speaker, it was that of a leader. When you lead, you must be very clear that I'm here to seek some help also. He could be a president, but he was running for a president. So he was there to seek the help in a very decent manner.
In a humble manner.
Worthy of a post that he was running for. So that is what I noted. And I did note that he was very clear that he was here to engage with the audience. He didn't make it a one-way traffic. It was a complete in sync kind of speech. And yes, that's all I know.
Thank you so much. Quickly, Lata, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that it was so authentic how he revealed himself. Like there was that moment when he was saying, "I'm the president and this lady's taken my show." So he was very, very genuine in the way, and that came across in many places. But they're short of time, so just keeping it brief.
Thank you so much. Thanks for adjusting. Okay, I'll quickly close this discussion by adding a few things. The story is supposed to have a character. There were two characters in the story. One was he himself and was the other lady. Whenever you introduce the character, you describe it very well, which is what he did exceptionally well. There was conflict and dilemma. So if we go back to the story arc, there was a problem and how he developed the problem, and then how he brought it down and kind of told what he learned from the entire journey, how this thing became the anthem for his entire campaign henceforth. And last but not the least, the message. What is the message that he was trying to tell from this story? Anybody?
The single most important message was that he keeps his promises. That's something he had mentioned that in the beginning.
Okay, yes. Anything else from the story? Why is he telling the story in the
It
first
was-
place?
It were the words that they like he spoke. Are you fired up, ready to go? So those were the words that energized. Even when you're down, he was telling the importance of the words.
Absolutely.
Which can move you.
Okay.
I think he was also trying to make a point where you should not underestimate, the kind of audience that you come across. So him from a senator, as a senator, moving, to a president's position, having to go to a small town at the corner of the world where there is nothing around him as opposed to what he's used to, and irrespective of that, having a completely unexpected experience, which sort of became his anthem for the rest of his.
Can I
Running out
can I interject?
Yes, please, very quickly. We are really running out of time now. Sorry.
What I really learned from this particular incident was the fact that the president, no matter how bad his mood was, one member of the audience could change things for him. And I thought that was my learning.
Absolutely, you have almost nailed it. What message we have understood from the story is that one person can bring about a change. So what he's basically trying to say in the story is that one person changed my entire campaign. You all, with your voice and your vote, because they're actually looking for vote, can bring about a change in the world. So that's the key message that we take away from the story. Do you agree?
If you can, I just want to put one word here. Wherever he is, he's just wanted to connect with the people.
True.
So that's how he's able to pull his voters.
Yeah.
Speak their language, understand the terrain, or whatever. Connecting with the people.
True, true.
Another important thing that I think what comes across also is that you can learn from anybody at any time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you everyone. We had a wonderful interactive session. We move on because we're running short of time. I will very, very briefly touch on the other points like the business presentation, the appraisal and the feedback interviews, and sharing of values. Business presentation is actually a business scenario where you're either conducting a meeting or raising a pitch. Sorry, but we had a lot of content on this, and business presentation is actually a full day session. I will very briefly touch on this by saying that, if you start a particular business presentation using a story, it can capture your audience attention. But what is very important here is that you need to start with a story that is relevant. You cannot narrate fiction. You cannot narrate a story which is completely irrelevant. To give you an example of something like this is that in case you're trying to conduct a meeting where you are trying to emphasize on, where you want to emphasize on following standard procedures. So I would say that I was standing at the traffic signal right outside my house today morning and waiting for the signal to turn green. I suddenly realized one of the bikers right next to me had no patience and he decided to jump the signal. And in no time, there were another couple of bikers on the left that also decided to do the same. And within no time, I think everybody around me were thinking, "Jab wo kar sakta hai, to why not me?" And everybody started to cross the signal, irrespective of the signal being red. And the traffic was coming from all directions, and it was a complete chaos. Everything came to a standstill, and it took me double the time to reach the office. And I'm so frustrated, and I really don't understand why can't people just follow procedures. I realize that it is so important for each one of us to follow the procedures to make sure that things fall in place and work smoothly. So if you use a story which is relevant is only when it's going to make an impact. Talking about appraisals and feedbacks, when you are giving a feedback, rather than saying that you need to do a better job, please make sure that you narrate the entire journey and ask questions as to how things could have been differently and what would be the impact if they were done differently. That could be the story around your feedback. Even appraisals, when you are writing an appraisal form for yourself, don't just mention that, you know, I did project A, project B, project C. Mention the journey, mention what were the hurdles in the project, what were the learnings in the project. Talk about the things that did not go well, talk about things that did go well, and finally, in the end, talk about how you think the project was a success. So that is the story of the project. Moving to interviews, when you are sitting in front of an interviewer, if you explain all over again what's written in your CV, that's a missed opportunity. You are sitting in the interview because the interviewer has read your CV. Now talk about something extra. Now, what is that extra? That is the story of your experiences. Talk about the projects, talk about your passion, talk about outside work activities, CSR activities that you are part of. So that's what is all about storytelling in the business world. The next point, sharing of values. I will tell Justin to take this up. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was telling you, the Ogilvy situation. I mean, what you realize is that the most motivated employees are the people who believe in something. And therefore, the company's story, its vision, its mission needs to resonate with the employee. Because given the emotional nature of work, people connect with stories. And top talent is not attracted to a company just because they're offering the highest salaries and perks and free snacks in the cafeteria. They're going to move on very quickly if you do not connect with your employees through stories. And building values through storytelling is also what builds engagement with employees. They're going to stay because of the stories that you tell, because of the culture within the organization, which has been created by the stories. And stories, therefore, you find have a direct correlation to the success of a business. And people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and David Ogilvy knew that intuitively.
And he's taking out his working time in the morning and he's doing this. So it will take about 3,000 to 5,000.
Sorry, yeah.
So that is essentially what the power of values and corporate culture is within an organization. The fact that people are humans and employees are humans and they relate to stories and they are within the organization primarily because of the stories that exist about the company. Okay, so here are the kind of business stories that you could tell in a business scenario. We have value stories, employee stories, customer stories, and founder and origin stories. So this is a story of it actually happened last week when my wife was planning to buy a laptop, and we visited 3 outlets, and ended up getting completely confused about which laptop to buy, because the sales guy invariably was talking about the features and the technicalities and of the laptop, which completely confused us. And finally we said, hang it, let's get back home. And then my wife calls up a friend who is good with technology products, and he asks her that one question which the sales guy should have asked in the first place. What are you going to use the laptop for? And when she answered the question, he managed to narrow down the options to three laptops. And she picked up one on the basis of the fact that ICICI was giving a 10% off on the ICICI card. Now, why isn't it that salespeople are not trained to recognize the buyer and relate a model to that buyer's needs? And I was thinking about it, and I realized that all they needed to do was to arrive at, let's say, 4 or 5 target audience definitions. Let's say you're either a independent consultant, or you're a professional, or you're a student or teacher, or you're an entrepreneur, or at an extreme end, you're a gamer. And each audience's needs and usage can be studied and a match made with a corresponding laptop model. And all that the sales guy is trained on each audience's needs and profiles. And he actually knows the story of each. And when a person stands in front of him at the counter, the first question he asks is, "Madam, what work do you do?" And when she says, "I'm a consultant and I do training and I use my email a lot, I use the web a lot, of course, and these are, PowerPoint and Excel," he says, "I have the perfect laptop for you, because just 2 weeks ago, this other consultant bought this for exactly the same reason." And he can connect her directly. And the thought that would go through her mind is, here's a guy who understands me. He knows what I need. He's related to her as a customer with very specific needs from an emotional point of view. And he's not talking technology, he's not talking specifications. He's talking of what your need is. That's a classic value story. Now let's move to a employee story. Now, in the old days, there was the grapevine. The employee story is classic because it's something which businesses haven't recognized as a powerful thing that they can utilize in their businesses. In the old days, you had the grapevine. Today, you have social media. And employees are posting stuff from within organizations about what they are doing, about colleagues that they are hanging out with about parties that are happening with the organization, and it's going out into the world. The moment companies recognize that this is a powerful storytelling avenue, they can capture it and start sharing it in company handbooks, in the orientations that they do for new employees. They can share them on corporate media, social media, and talk about it in department meetings and town halls and company events. The research shows that candidates believe employee stories 3 times more than company stories coming out directly from the company. So it's time that companies recognize this and started exploiting the employee story. So these are a couple of pictures that come out of Ogilvy. Colleagues who, the one on the left was a conference that happened. The one in the middle is a friend who's, obviously she's happy working in the situation, and I know that she's been there for at least 10 years. So employee stories build authenticity and an identity for the brand. And the human connection is what is powerful that comes out of employee stories. Now here's a customer story. This again happened to me, Singapore Airlines. I have been very jealous of Singapore Airlines because for the longest time they've been hammering home the message that we are the airline that other airlines admire. I said, no, I've got to find fault with them. And every time I fly this airline, I say, I've got to find fault with these guys. And I flew with them most recently about 3 years ago. And I said, okay, let me pick faults with this brand. And the thing about when you're as an Indian, when you're booking a ticket on an international flight, whether it's through Make My Trip or through a travel agent, very often what happens is that you're not given a choice of what meal you can select, or whatever meal you select. Invariably, what you discover when you're actually on the aircraft and the meal that gets served to you is a vegetarian Hindu meal, which upsets me a lot, because the moment I get on an aircraft, I want to have an international meal served by that airline. And so I'm sitting in the Singapore Airlines flight heading to Singapore, and this guy comes to me and says, "Sir, you've ordered a Hindu vegetarian meal." I say, "I'm so sorry, but could you please change it to an international vegetarian meal?" He says, "No problem, sir, let me check." He goes, and within a few minutes, he's back with the international meal that I wanted. And he says, "I made the change, sir." And he says, "In addition, I've made the change in the other sectors that you're flying on up to your return trip back to India." And I'm looking stunned. And I'm thinking, there these guys go again. They've stumped me again with their service. I mean, I can't find fault with Singapore Airlines again. And the airline business, as all of you would know, is the most difficult business where keeping a customer happy is concerned. It's the easiest place to screw up. That's my favorite new employee story, and it comes from Singapore Airlines.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, the next story that we have is the next area basically that we have. My screen has froze, sorry. Can you see the slides?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
So going back to the list that we had, we talked about there are supposed to be value stories, there are employee stories, there is customer stories, and then there is founder or origin stories. If you are an entrepreneur, when you go out to an investor or a customer, use your stories to say how your venture started. What is your passion? What is the spark that got you started and that made you begin this particular venture? Or why are you so unique? Why should a customer or an investor spend time and money on your business? Is why you are unique. And if you don't tell that story, that's an extremely big missed opportunity. You need to go ahead and tell your story. There are various examples of such things wherein there's one that comes to my mind is you all have heard of Jack Ma, who's the founder of Alibaba. There's a very popular story that when he went to SoftBank looking for investment, and when he went there, he did not go there with any presentations, any data and facts about his business. He had no business plan and had only about 25 employees. But it was told that the decision was made in 5 minutes of the meeting. Why? Because the CEO of SoftBank saw passion and leadership skills in him. And the kind of talks and the stories that he told were exceptional, were far above all the others. And he got an investment of 20 million back in year 2000. That's the power of stories, because the data and facts don't work as much as your stories do. In case you have any questions, we're moving a little fast than planned in all these segments. In case you have any questions, we are happy to address at the end of the session. Okay, this is what we want to talk about. If you are hypothetically working in the Tata company, any of the sectors, and somebody tells you, tell your founder story. Is this my founder story? No, not really. These are facts. If we talk about the passion that JRD brought into the aviation industry, that made him pioneer the aviation industry, that is a story. If I talk about how Ratan Tata was not keen to join the business, but still he was made to join. And then the kind of effort he put in and the kind of challenges that he had when he was named the successor of JRD Tata, and how he was completely written off in the beginning, the kind of challenges he faced later on, and what all steps he took to prove himself and come out with flying colors is the story. So when you tell the stories of the founder, it is not the facts, but it is their journey, it is their passion, it is their dedication that we need to talk about. Okay, quickly moving on. Okay, we have another activity. In this activity, Justin, would you agree we have about 10 minutes for this activity?
Yeah, I do. Okay.
So what is this activity? We all know that we are going through one crisis situation right now. This is a situation where none of us expected that we all going to be sitting at home, and then this is a situation that the entire world is impacted by. Now, if we go back in history and see all the information that we have right now about, say, World War I, the Great Depression, the independence and all that, has been given to us through stories. We have heard from our grandparents talking about how they had to move from Pakistan and settle in India and the kind of hardships they had and how they built their life again. We have read in the books about the stories about the World War I, World War II. We have again read in the books about how a lot of companies was established during a crisis situation. Now we are here at a point where we are going through a crisis. What I want you to do is we move into breakout rooms again. I want you to share with the group some stories or one story that you will tell your future generation about this crisis situation, COVID-19, and how your business or your career went through this crisis and you managed to stay afloat. What are the steps you are taking, or what are some examples of courage that you have seen around to make sure, in the business context, to make sure that the business stays afloat or your career is not impacted much. So we move to the breakout rooms. We will try and wrap up this activity in 10 minutes, which is, it is right now 12:14. So by 25, we wrap this up.
1:14. 1:14.
Sorry, yeah, I'm so sorry. 1:14. By 1:25, a little before that, we wrap this up. Hi there, you guys want to move to one of the rooms?
me tell you about myself. I'm a trainer by profession, but I also run my own company of interior design. And I thought this was a great opportunity. Training budget is the first one to be cut off usually whenever such a thing happens. But what I did was I had a plan B, which I started way back in 2009. So what I did was I understood that more and more people are staying indoors, and that's where the interior design thing came up. And we started having more and more meetings with people, of course, using masks and gloves and everything. But I think my business has never done as well as it is today.
Wow, good for you.
Simply because everyone is staying indoors and wants to have a beautiful home. Yeah.
Yes. Were you able to actually service your customers during this time with the lockdown?
Yes, we did. We've had a lot of meetings also, because I'm staying in Dubai, Chris, and whoever's in our room. And in Dubai, things are not as bad as in the rest of the world. So we've just got, I think probably the lowest rate of corona, people who've been affected. So we've been going, meeting people, getting them. We specialize in carpets. So we're getting a lot of good orders these days, because everyone, like I said, wants to beautify their home and, feel more happy at home. So like if you do the SWOT analysis, everyone's threat has become our opportunity.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. You want to tell us something about yourself?
Yeah. Basically, I have two businesses with my brother. We work together.
Okay.
The first thing that we have is we have a teak wood furniture factory in Indonesia.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and that was affected because the workers had to stay home, and so we couldn't produce as much as we did in the previous months.
Okay.
So the business was affected. Fortunately, Indonesia was the area that our factory is in was not considered a zone, so it wasn't. It didn't have that many cases, so they were able to
like in Dubai, yeah.
they were able to resume work quickly. So that didn't affect us too much. The other business that we do is we represent an American company that sells wellness products here in Malaysia and in 18 other countries. And that, fortunately, is an online business as well. So our customers were able to make their orders online, and the courier services in Malaysia were not affected.
Oh, wonderful.
Goods were able to be distributed. So I guess the story I would tell my grandchildren was how we managed to convert our living room into our corporate headquarters.
Right. Home offices and what have you. Yeah.
Yes. And so, so we were able to survive the storm and get through this period without too much damage to the overall businesses.
Excellent. How heartening to hear that. Is there anyone else in our room?
Yeah, what is one lesson that you'll pass on to the next generation?
For me, Shruti, you're talking to me, Shruti?
Both of you, actually. You can go first.
Okay, so I guess, if you look at how things are in today's times, it's all people groaning away. And I would say that this time of Corona actually happened to be the best for me. And that's the story that I will tell everyone. That look, everyone's threat can sometimes become your opportunity. In 2009, very quickly, let me tell you, Shruti, that in the UAE, the companies that did the best when the recession happened and hit us very badly was the nicotine industry. Who would have thought? Well, because, people are so stressed, they're having more nicotine into them. And it was not the Davidoffs and the Marlboros that did well. It was the Gitans. We actually did a case study on this, that they did phenomenally well. So the bottom line is everyone's threat can become your opportunity.
Absolutely. You just need to look at it positively.
Yes.
Grab the yes.
Yeah.
You want to go? Chris, you want to talk about it? Well, basically, I think a lot of people learn the hard way that you need more than one source of income. If you have multiple streams of income, some
excellent. Yes, very good point.
And I think they have to learn the hard way. Just yesterday, I got a phone call from a good friend who said he's been made redundant, and he doesn't have a plan B. So I'm trying to help him. But if he had worked on a plan B beforehand, he wouldn't be faced with this situation today. That's a very good point. Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, like I said, in 2009, because I was in full-time training. And then I realized, like I said, that the training budgets are the first to be cut off whenever there are issues like this. So that's when I came up with Plan B myself.
True.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Arvind, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so actually, I'd like to say something on behalf of my wife, Kanchan, who's not here right now. So she was running a small business called Gaon Fresh, where we, supply unrefined edible oils and desi ghee. So these are all chemical-free products, and the business had taken off quite well in about a year. And when COVID hit, we were actually quite badly affected because our supplies used to come from Rajasthan, and there was everything was shut there. It was in fact not possible to transport any goods from Rajasthan to Delhi, which is the main market. So we had practically 100% supply disruption. But we just kept on the lookout for how fast we could resume our supplies, and in spite of a 2 or 3 month gap where we were not able to supply anything to the customer, this is really a testimony to, I guess, what we had done beforehand. We've managed to get back to, I would say, about 60 to 70% of sales of our pre-COVID levels, simply by just telling our customers, hang on, we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. So customers understood, and people have now started buying our products all over again, even though they had a gap for 2-3 months. And I'm sure they must have been buying edible oils and ghee from someone else anyhow. So that's the story of Gaon Fresh. I think you just
Yes,
got
but Arvind, may I also be allowed to say that if you've built a good rapport with your customers, they understand during such moments, I mean, this was a global thing. But that being said, if you've got a good rapport, even if there's a problem, there's always the customer who's on your side.
Sure. Agreed. Yeah. And if you look at Gaon Fresh, actually, we tell a good story on our website. We talk about how we are actually trying to help small farmers, which is actually what we do. And
wow.
when we source ghee, actually, we source the ghee from the lady of the household. And what she does is, invariably, whatever money we pay her for the ghee, she quietly keeps aside a part of that, to use in her own way as she sees fit, either for her daughter or for herself or whatever.
This sounds like the Joseph Kurian story.
Yeah. So it's actually, it's a story. We are helping out small farmers, and we are helping
Very
out
nice.
ladies. We are not unique.
Very nice.
Others are also doing this, but yeah, we are doing. Yeah.
Excellent.
I think it's time for us to get back. I'll quickly say, I think, Arvind, the key message from your story, like Hina also said, is about making sure that you connect with your customers, and that's when they really understand. Apart from all the hard work, I think connecting with your customers is extremely important.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, true.
Can we head back now? Yeah. Mute. Sorry, I was on mute. So do you want to take over? Should we hear from?
Yeah, let's hear.
Should we hear from everybody? What did they really feel?
I'm from Breakout Room 2, I think.
Okay.
Whatever. So what we realized at the end of it, that although there was one business story when they talked about work from home culture and all that, somehow it all went around more about the personal changes which we have felt all this time. We couldn't get on to that business aspect of things at all. Like, I mean, the first impact of this crisis has been more personally than any other else. I think a lot of people found it very easy to seamlessly integrate technology into their lives and, move on from there. while the impact on our own personal lives have been much, much larger. So I'll be happy to hear if somebody had really good business stories to tell in that sense, because our room was not so much about it.
True.
Anybody else?
Arvind,
Sorry, what
Arvind,
was
can
that?
I request you to say something, please? You've been quiet for a long time.
Arvind shared some nice, interesting things with us
He
in
did.
our room.
And
Yeah, he did.
would
Yeah.
he go public with it? Arvind?
Good question.
Justin, yeah, I had muted myself. Tell me.
So, would you like to share something in the larger group?
What I shared in the breakout room, I don't know, was that something which everyone could hear, or it was only?
No, it was just the 4 of us in the room. So that was a wonderful story. I'm sure everybody wants to hear that.
Yeah. So basically, this is a story about, as I said, about a business that actually my wife runs, Kanchan. She's not here just now. So, it's a business where we supply unrefined natural edible oils and ghee made from, from milk of desi cows. And when COVID hit us, we were actually quite badly affected because, we used to source all our edible oils and ghee from Rajasthan. And when the lockdown happened, we were unable to get a product to our main market, which is Delhi, for a while. I mean, sure, we had some pipeline stocks, but those got exhausted pretty fast. So for 2 to 3 months, we literally had zero supply available to give to customers. And frankly, there was nothing we could do. So all we did during that time was to just tell our customers that, look, this is the problem we're facing. We are working on trying to restore supply as soon as possible. And, just bear with us till then. So there was really nothing we could do. So it was just an appeal for, patience. So fortunately, we were able to restore our supplies about a month or so ago. And we are almost, back at about 60 to 70% of our pre-COVID sales levels. Most of our customers have stuck with us. And I think part of the reason is that the story of Gaon Fresh, which we had actually done pre-COVID, kind of resonated with people, which is that, we are there to, help small farmers, which is what we do. And particularly in our ghee, we work with the lady of the household. So we buy the ghee from the lady of the household, and she actually takes the money and keeps aside a part of it for herself. She doesn't let the husband or anyone else know about it. So she uses it to, help her daughters or, do something for herself.
Yeah.
It's her own hidden income, which, no one else is aware of. So we generally tell these stories when we talk to our customers. And there are so many things when you do edible oils the natural way, you press them in a ghani, don't add any chemicals, etc., etc. So that story is part of what we say on our packaging, on our website, etc. So it is the story that appeals as much as the product. But frankly, we did this pre-COVID. So that's what I guess saw us through. So we are back to about 60-70% of pre-COVID sales.
That's fantastic. Great story. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So do we have any more stories, or should we go ahead? We are actually ahead of time. We are actually running late now, sorry.
A minute or two.
So I think we can conclude, Justin, now.
Okay. Yeah. So in these uncertain and crazy times, I think we can use stories to spark transformation. I think I've been hammering on about transformation for the longest time, and I think that's a key thing that this whole season, this whole time is about transformation. We're forced to transform. We're forced to accept new realities. It's going to be a new normal when we get back. The thing is that stories allow us to have experiences that inspire collaboration, build compassion, and they actually demonstrate that there is more that's common across all of us than what's different between us. And as leaders, authentic communication through story makes us more accessible to others and gives the people that you work with, permission to be open and honest with you. been an honor to be able to share with you some of our learnings, and we are thrilled that you could be with us for the last couple of hours. Shruti?
Yeah, I cannot thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. To give an example, that I have a whole list of notes of the Obama story on what I wanted to share. And you saw that by the end of the thing, I didn't have to share anything. You all kind of had all of these ticked. And thank you so much. And thanks for all your patience. And we would love you to leave us a feedback and get in touch with
Brilliant.
us in case you think you need any more help. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you,
Very
Shruti.
illuminating.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Justin.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Emma.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you guys. You were wonderful. Both of you were wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Who
you.
is that?
Thank you so
Who
much.
is that?
Please
Who
leave
said
us a
that?
feedback.
Who said
I
that?
have. It's done.
Done.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's Renu. Justin, that was me,
Thank,
Renu.
thank you, Renu.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Enjoyed
Bye.
the session.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yes, and I have mentioned I would like to be notified of your few further programs, yeah?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. We would
Actually,
love
the
that.
next one
Thank
will be
you.
a next one will be a paid one. I was telling Shruti.
Nevertheless, at least inform.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
We hope to
No,
see you
no,
there as
Okay.
well.
it makes a lot of business
Yes,
sense.
Thank
Makes a
you.
lot of business
yes,
sense.
for sure it
Enough
does.
of freebies.
The last activity, yeah? So, all right.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
All for
everyone.
it.
Thank
Thank
All
you.
you.
for it.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Hari, thanks for being with us.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rakesh.
Justin. Bye.
Thank
Good
you,
talk,
Chris.
everyone.
Thanks, Justin and Shruti. It's a wonderful that you called me and made me participate.
Thank you so much.
And look at the world map, Shruti.
I will for sure. And I'll make sure my sons do too.
Yeah, okay. You have a story now.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Have a good weekend, all of you.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
So, Rakesh sir, you want to talk us through your experience? You're on mute, sir.
Mute.
Sorry. So this is the first program I've come across. May have attended many webinars where it is so much interaction you've made. I mean, this interaction has made people learn more, come out with their experiences, observations, suggestions, views. I think there is a lot of learning both ways, I would say. And as far as managing work is concerned, I mean, I think I just noted down stories at workplace. Please include managing change, because you talked about COVID-19, and there are companies which have now shifted from the traditional business methodologies to new methodologies or the new ways of working in the new normal. I've given my story how we have moved from physical selling to digital selling. I think Justin was there.
Powerful.
I've explained to him how we have done it. And actually now I acknowledge that the arc which you showed, we didn't know about it, or I didn't know about it, but we followed the arc because there were a lot of constraints from our team, which we shared our own ideas here with the top team, shared with the best salespeople. And then they gave a lot of constraints. They asked us a lot of questions, which made us go back to the design board and then redraw the whole thing. And then they accepted and the whole thing flowed down. And today we are the first company in the industry who has successfully managed this transformation. Imagine business to business selling has not totally gone digital. We don't meet our customers. So 250 people don't meet customers. They just see each other and they're as interactive as you were. So I think it was a brilliant program from your side. You've really drawn out a lot of things from your from the participants. It's not a one-way program, which I keep listening to. It's like gets boring and your mind start wavering. But you held your audience very captivating, like the way Barack Obama did. So,
thank you so much.
So both of you did very well. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
yeah, it was really a pleasure to be with all of both of you.
Thank you so much.
So
So actually, we consciously try to make sure that most of our sessions are interactive because we like to, facilitate people, give them the path, and then try to make sure that they come up with the ideas rather than we giving a single-sided monochrome yarn all the time. So yes, it works well for us also.
Yeah, and also, in this process, you learn a lot from your people because you're like your customers. So customers also give a lot of good ideas to them.
Absolutely. True.
Brilliant. Overall, very brilliant and a very good combination both of you have. Anytime you want anything you want from me or anytime you can offline, you can connect me and or probably in the
lovely.
Sure, sir. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
we are doing a lot of things like this, small incremental things, but the business change has been the biggest gain for us, and that has all been done through stories only. All stories and have been related.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
I hope you've given us a feedback.
I don't know where to give the feedback.
I have sent the
There's a
link on the chat. So any kind of feedback, even if you have some really good constructive feedback for us, it will be great.
On the chat.
I can send it to you again.
Okay, let me have a look. I just said very. Okay, here it is. Okay, fine. So, okay, I'll do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so
Most
much.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. Thanks for the session. It was very interactive session.
Thank you.
And that engaged very well.
She's Jaya. She's with me. She works with me. She's my colleague.
Okay, okay.
Actually, she could not register. She registered, but her name didn't appear. So that number is coming.
Okay.
Yes, that's why the number is there.
You can edit in your profiles when you are seeing your participants. It's fairly straightforward. You can do it next time, maybe.
Sure.
Sure. Thank you, Jaya. Thank you for taking out time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.